Hello BookTube. For this Tech Thursday, I'm going to be doing the What's Lurking on My Kindle tag, Comics Edition. Yesterday, for their World's Greatest Comics team-up, Michael K. Vaughan and Steve Donahue did a Comics Edition of the What's Lurking on My Kindle tag that Michael K. Vaughan created about a week or so ago, and Steve Donahue has weaponized. The origins of this tag are that a few months ago, I'm thinking he's a new booktuber, sorry about that, named Criminali, created a satanic reading challenge. Participants will forego buying new books until they have read 100 books that are currently in their collection. Michael K. Vaughan is a participant in this satanic challenge, and he had the idea that the books he has on Kindle, reading those would count as for the challenge. So he's went through some of the books he has on his Kindle. At the same time, he's also going through the other books, the physical books he has in his collection, with the Books That Time Forgot series, which I am absolutely loving. And Steve Donahue kind of weaponized this What's Lurking on My Kindle into a tag that he has made several videos of, because he's got probably billions of books on all of his billions of devices. Well, it's not billions or billions, but it's a lot. And yesterday they did a comics version, because they do a weekly comics feature where Michael K. Vaughan will talk about a comic book and Steve Donahue will respond. So yeah, I thought maybe I would get on the act, because while I have a minuscule number of books on my Kindle, I do not particularly care for ebooks. I barely use my Kindle to read ebooks on, whether they're through Amazon or the Kindle or through the ebook function at my library. I much prefer physical books. So I have pretty much gone to reading what I have in my physical library, in my room right here. Although that's not necessarily true for comics. Of the tiny amount of books I have in my Kindle, the vast majority are comics. Largely because I have a weird relationship with comics, which probably isn't all that weird. I love comics. I love comics. I love superheroes, and I'm extending to manga. But at the same time, I'm not consistent in my collections, in my collecting. I collected comics for a number of years when I was a preteen and early teen, and then I got rid of my collection, and then I started back up around the New 52, and built up a tiny collection, and then got rid of it within a year or so. And same thing pretty much happened with manga. Although I have since started collecting physical copies of manga again, I haven't done the same for comics. So I usually, if I wanted to read comics, I'd either check them out from my local library, or now hope that they are on Kindle Unlimited, which I do occasionally use, although I haven't used it for months. But anyway, let's get to what I have on, what comics I have, and manga I have on my Kindle. So, single issues, I only have 3. Lords of Empire, Emperor Hulkling, which is a prelude comic to the Empyre event that Marvel put out at the beginning of 2020. This issue features Hulkling, or Teddy Altman, a longtime member of the Young Avengers, in a bit of a slump. His boyfriend, fiance, Wiccan, is off with the superhero team Strikeforce, and Teddy doesn't really have much to do. When he is approached by representatives of this Korean Skrull alien species to basically become the emperor of a combined Kree Skrull empire. The Korean Skrull have been, as individual empires, have been fighting each other for millennia. And they unite to face a common foe, which forms the main plot of the Empyre event, which we'll get to in a second. So Hulkling becomes Emperor Dork the Eighth. And I quite enjoyed the issue quite a bit. The other two single issues I have are also Wiccan and Hulkling one-shots. The first one is King in Black, where Emperor Hulkling and his now husband Wiccan are enjoying their honeymoon and have to deal with a symbiote invasion as part of the King in Black storyline. And then I also have the Wiccan and Hulkling one-shot for The Last Annihilation, which was a cosmic event that Marvel put out a few months ago. And in this issue, basically, Wiccan and Hulkling turn the tide against Dormammu's invasion of the Marvel Universe. So, if you've noticed my comic book, when I do talk about comics, Wiccan is my favorite superhero, and Wiccan and Hulkling are my favorite pairing, and I kind of would like to see either a new Young Avengers series, although maybe giving them a new name because they're not really young anymore, or just a Wiccan and Hulkling duo book at some point. Anyway, so moving on to collections that I have. And I know I'm not showing any of the images because I film videos on my Kindle, and I don't have any other way of showing what I'm talking about. So I'll leave mentions in the show notes like I usually do, and if you want to check them out, you can go look them up while you watch this video or afterwards. Anyway, so going on to the collections, I have the first volume of an omnibus of IDW's run of the first IDW run of G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe is a toy line put out by Hasbro that really really exploded in the early 80s when they moved from the tall action dolls to smaller action figures. And they had a whole lot of characters, a whole lot of vehicles and playsets and all of that. And I was really into it, and G.I. Joe was one of the an issue of the Marvel run of G.I. Joe was one of my first comics. And Marvel had G.I. Joe for a decade or more under the helm of Larry Hama before it moved to Devil's Due at some point, and they had it for a number of years, and then the rights shifted to IDW, who currently still have the rights to do G.I. Joe. I've read some arcs, some collections in this run. I've read Cobra Command, I think the first volume of the Cobra Civil War arc, and I quite enjoyed it, particularly Cobra Command, where Cobra, under a new Cobra commander, invades a South Asian country or Southeast Asian country and completely defeat. It's just a wonderful, amazing storyline where basically Cobra wins. I mean, G.I. Joe manages to defeat Cobra in some battles, but for the most part, Cobra achieves all of its military objectives, and it is a wonderful. I enjoyed it immensely. I also have a number of Marvel collections, Maximum Carnage, which I've talked about. It's a Spider-Man storyline from the early 90s that features the symbiote son of Venom, raising all sorts of mayhem with a number of other homicidal, psychotic supervillains, Shriek, Carrion, Demogoblin, Doppelganger, all of whom I am quite fond of. I did really get into comics in the 90s, and those batch of villains were rather prominent, particularly Shriek, Carrion, and Demogoblin. I also have a number of X-Men titles, all from the Krakoa era, the current era of the X-Men. I have the first 2 volumes of Marauders, which I've talked about before when I read them. Quite enjoyed them, except, of course, the problem of why exactly Kate Pryde had certain issues because of her powers when Shinobi Shaw, who has practically the same power set, didn't. I'm not entirely sure about, but for that, I mean, except for that, I really enjoyed that series. It's basically about a group of X-Men who, under the captainship of Kate Pryde, who travel the world rescuing mutants from anti-mutant governments and bringing them to Krakoa. I've also read the first volumes of Hellions and X Factor. X Factor is an investigative unit investigating the deaths of mutants for the Resurrection Protocols, and Hellions is basically the X-Men's version of the Suicide Squad, which is hilarious. Really love that first volume. Although not necessarily the villain. I thought she could have been a bit more prominent. Or anyway. And then I also have House of X, Powers of X, and an X-Men one before they got relaunched. Outside of the X-Men, I have the first volume of Ta-Nehisi Coates' run on Captain America, which I got largely because it features one of my favorite X-Men villains rather prominently, Selene. I haven't read it yet, though. I also have Strikeforce, Volume 1, which features Wiccan, as I mentioned earlier. Rather enjoyed it, although not necessarily pleased with how Tini Howard handled Wiccan. Also have 2 volumes of Young Avengers, the Children's Crusade, and the first volume of Kieron Gillen's run on Young Avengers, which I love the artwork, maybe not so much the writing. And then I also have, moving on to DC, the first volume. I don't know if it's like an omnibus or more of just a first volume of Jeff Johns' run on the Teen Titans, which is like this, I guess maybe the second great run on the Titans since like Marv Wolfman's New Teen Titans. And so Jeff Johns' run on the Teen Titans basically merges Young Justice, the team of Tim Drake, Connor Kent, Superboy, Wonder Girl, Cassie Sandsmark, with members of the Teen Titans, Beast Boy, Raven, Cyborg, Starfire, and other characters. And I rather enjoyed what I read of it. It's been a while since I've read it, and I haven't read it since I added it to my Kindle. Moving on to manga, I do have a few manga volumes. Vinland Saga, which I haven't gotten to. Air Gear, the first omnibus of Air Gear by O Great, which is a series that takes the shonen manga tropes and archetypes and merges them with skating. And I like the artwork, but I've never quite gotten into the series, and I really need to try. And then I also have the first volume of Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest, which is the sequel to Fairy Tail, my favorite manga, which I've never actually read yet. Not Fairy Tail, but Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest, which I really need to get to, although I kind of want to get all of Fairy Tail before I get to 100 Years Quest, so we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, that's all of the comics I have on my Kindle. I might do what else I have on my Kindle in another video next week. We'll see about that. Anyway, so that's about all I have for today. I'll see you tomorrow evening for weekly reads, and then next week, obviously. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now. Thank you, BookTube. Have a great afternoon, and stay safe.